And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. This is Ryan Miller with North Carolina Building Performance Association. We are thrilled to have folks listening in here live on today's webinar. It is April 1st, 2020. No jokes about April Fool's Day here. We're happy to have y'all on board, and then we know that we'll have some folks listening in later on through our video recording, so we appreciate everyone attending. Good to see everybody today. We're excited to be talking about a very important topic in today's green building, building performance, and just kind of overall environment of waste as a resource in the built environment. We'll be hearing from Rob Hacker, one of the experts over at CaraGreen, based right here in the Raleigh area. They provide healthy building materials all over the country of many, many types, as I've been learning lately. And so we'll be kicking it over to him in just a couple of minutes to lead today's webinar. First off, just want to say thanks to everyone for attending. Again, we appreciate having our members on here from NCBPA. They are able to attend all of our webinars for either free or a very discounted price, and have access to all of our past webinars via video recordings on our members only portal. So if you're not a member of NCBPA already, we would love to have you consider joining. Membership is $300 per year per company, so that's about $25 per month. We do a lot more than just webinars, but right now we are absolutely focused on webinars and other types of educational videos to make sure that as some folks are working from home and looking to find new opportunities and sharpen their skills, as we've been talking about, that we're helping that process. But NCBPA is the trade association for high performance, energy efficient, and green builders and other types of contractors, product suppliers, and much, much more. And we do policy, workforce development, advocacy, education, and so much more. So we would love to have more members in the association to participate in our work, and just encourage folks to take a look at our website, buildingnc.org. So for today's webinar, as I mentioned before, we'll be keeping folks on mute for the duration. That is just so that we can avoid any background noise and things like that. We will have Rob speaking live and taking questions via our chat box. So feel free to put questions into the chat box in GoToMeeting, and I will be able to respond to those and provide those questions to Rob. And then when we get to the end of the webinar, we will open up the phone line and can have some discussion there. We will be sending out a PDF copy of today's presentation at the end, so you'll have that in your email soon after we wrap up, as well as a video recording that you are welcome to share with your coworkers. Also, we have lots of webinars on the schedule right now. CaraGreen, Maddie actually kicked off the first of this new series last week with biophilic design. And we've done career opportunities, building enclosures yesterday as well. Tomorrow is going to be moisture control, moisture being the enemy of a healthy home. And then next week we have a series starting on fundamentals of residential HVAC, and then business profitability as well. So lots of topics, and they will all be adding much, much more content to our course catalog on our website, which you can find there. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rob to kick off today's webinar. And again, just invite folks to put their questions and comments in the chat box, and we'll be happy to have the discussion there. So Rob, the floor is yours. And Rob, will need to get yourself off of mute just so that we can hear you for the next hour or so. And this happens sometimes. So give me just a second here, folks. I'm going to message Rob to make sure that we can hear him. Rob, it looks like I cannot hear you quite yet, so we'll need to make sure that we can get your audio going before we get started. And just so folks know, Rob is on. We tested this out a little bit earlier before we got started here, of course.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Rob.
Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. But as
No
Ryan
problem.
mentioned, I'm Rob. I'm from CaraGreen, and I'm really happy to be able to talk about waste as a resource and creating better. CaraGreen is a distributor. We are focused on sustainable and healthy materials. So that's both environmental sustainability and, focused on occupant health as well. So we really try to act as a source of information for everyone out there in the industry to help drive sustainability in the built environment. So, we really hope to make the product selection process a lot easier by being this source of education. And we do this through like our Instagram, our blog, our podcast, and now more recently, a lot of virtual presentations. So we speak on a lot of different topics. If you ever want an individual course or an individual presentation, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to work with you during this difficult time. So now we're just going to dive right into it. So today we're going to be talking about creating better and using waste as a resource. So what I really like to bring in with this topic is that it's really core to CaraGreen's mission overall, all about using materials that, enhance a building's sustainability, both in the environmental sense and the health sense. So there is a video that goes along with us. We're going to attach it in the email to follow up so that you can all view it. It's just a nice summary of what this presentation consists of. So basically, Create Better was created by CaraGreen as a movement for companies, to band together for greater purpose. And our goal is really to restore the balance between nature and people, and health must be a priority in that. So today we're going to understand, why we need to create better overall, discover how we can use waste as a resource, understand how the built environment can actually give back to the natural world and help to restore this balance between the natural world and the built environment, and then learn how we can optimize design to minimize waste and environmental and health implications. So if we take a step back and, really look at how we started creating, why we started building, it was because we were creating out of necessity. We were building things like tools, lodging, community centers, and temples. And the primitive tools and lodging were really focused on efficiency, and beauty was inherent in the creative process. So really what's happening here is you're seeing buildings made out of local materials, things taken from the local natural environment. So they really reflected the geographies that they existed within. And beauty was inherent in this process. We weren't creating lots and lots of buildings, but each had its own purpose, and the natural beauty was very necessary to each of these structures. So there was a definite purpose for these buildings to exist, and a lot of reasoning for why they needed to look the way they did. And then we can step forward to the Industrial Revolution. So a lot has changed since then, especially in the built environment. But overall, the Industrial Revolution, led to a lot of great things for people. It led to greater access to healthcare, greater access to goods and services, but it also led to greater consumption. And with the introduction of things like the locomotive, automobiles, other transportation forms, it really started to increase the amount of resources we used for electricity, heating, different transportation methods, and our cities began to grow as a result of that, really, perfecting this term of urban sprawl. So what that is, just expanding out from cities, taking over more and more land, building out suburbia, and this just really resulted in lots and lots of building waste and lots of destruction of the natural world. So when we look at how we started to create without consequence during this time period, mass production, while it did give us things that, weren't really available prior to the Industrial Revolution, we did not focus on the consequences of the way we were producing. So while things may be becoming more efficient, waste was not included in that efficiency. So we were using lots more energy, and there was a lot more waste. And, that's just perpetuated itself over time to a point where we are now present day not able to keep up with the amount of waste we are producing. And it really just enabled this lifestyle that we have now, where we get what we want when we want it and don't really worry about what it takes to get a specific good or service. So what this has really led to is tipping the scale. So we are totally out of balance on how much we consume, how much we waste, and we're running out of a lot of resources. So whether that is space in landfills as a resource or oil as a resource, we're running out of these raw materials. So we need to start to look for ways to sustainably consume resources and also use a lot of the waste that we produce. So a lot of the things we're producing a lot of times get wasted without even being used, lots of food waste, and really ended up perfecting this cradle to grave lifestyle. So there's really three main sources of this big loss of balance between our waste and the natural world. And the first of these is the throwaway and consumer lifestyle. So, this is those plastic bags, lots of disposable plastic products, things like that. Pretty simple, things we're using on a daily basis and that end up in the trash. The next is the construction industry. So between construction and demolition, we are seeing huge impacts of waste, huge additions to our waste streams going into landfills. So we actually have a huge power as the construction industry to really curb this waste problem and start to restore balance between the natural world and our human environments. And the final contributor right here is really more of a psychological impact and factor. So we're really sheltered from all of our waste, especially in the United States. So what we have happening a lot of times is we put our trash out by the curb at night and it disappears before we wake up in the morning. And this is really contributing to the idea that we don't have to deal with any of our waste. It just disappears in the middle of the night, gets hauled off to the middle of nowhere where we never have to see it again. So what that does is it gives us the impression that we don't have a waste problem, that there's a place where it all goes and we don't really have to worry about it. But this is just, as time goes on, not going to be possible for much longer. And we really need to be aware of what we are wasting. So what do we do now? We can start to rebalance if we're smart about how we can create, maybe creating with waste instead of viewing it as like this end of life product. And we can really start to innovate with the future in mind. Think about how will this product impact the next 7 generations of humans on the earth? Is it going to pollute their water? Is it going to kill natural food sources? Things like that. We need to be thinking, with the future in mind, not just one generation, but, 7, 8, 9 generations into the future. So if we look at where we are today in terms of how much waste is being generated, the average person is generating 4 pounds of waste per day. So I'm going to tell you right now that in the United States, we are definitely way beyond that. We're probably, up closer to 6 or 7 pounds of waste per day just because of the lifestyle we live. Someone in the developing nation is not going to be developing as much waste as we are here in the United States. So it's definitely, our responsibility to try and regain this balance. So if you look at how our population's growing over time, in 2017, we had 7.5 billion people. The projected population for 2050 is around 10 billion. And I've seen figures that have even said the population won't start to level off until we reach 12 billion people. So that's going to dramatically increase the amount of waste we have every day. So jumping from 30 billion pounds of trash a day to 40 billion pounds of trash per day. And that is just so much. That's either good material that can be used again, or it's even things that can be recycled, composted. So there's lots of different ways we can start to cut this number down. We just need to be mindful of it. So if we look towards 2050 and look at how our plastic waste is going to start to accumulate, it is predicted that plastic waste will outnumber fish in the ocean ton for ton. So that means, more plastic than fish. Fish is a huge food source for most of the world and protein source more importantly. So what happens when we begin to lose all the fish and fill it up with plastic? All of those people that we're having, depending on those food sources, will no longer have anything to eat. Another statistic about our plastic usage, you know, we use enough plastic straws to fill 127 school buses every day. So that is this many school buses that we're seeing lining up right here. It's a huge number, and that's just plastic straws. So one tiny piece of plastic, one tiny sector of the plastic industry is generating this much waste. So there's a simple solution to this problem too. Many of you may be aware, maybe just use a metal straw instead. That could, you know, cut down tons and tons of straws if it were to be mass adopted. So just something to keep in mind about how much plastic we're using, and it's a great resource. We can recycle it, we can reuse it. It's in a lot of building materials. So just keep that in mind as we continue to move in to the rest of the presentation. So when we look at all the tons of plastic produced, there's 3 billion tons of it, and 76% of all of that plastic is put into a landfill, is ending up in our oceans. It's completely wasted, with only 9% being recycled. So what we're seeing, you know, if you have this much plastic, you know, as a more general representation, we are seeing the portion on the left being wasted and the portion on the right being recycled, with the missing percentage in there being goods that we use on a daily basis, like a keyboard, things that you're not throwing out very often. So when we look at these, you know, major problems of plastic pollution, of too much waste, what do we need to do to fix this? Can we fix what's already been done? And the best way to go about doing this is to simply clean up, you know, take these materials out of the natural world and use them for something else. I mean, it would be great if we could take them out and use them for building materials, which is becoming more and more common. So, you know, what we really need to prevent here is running out of those natural resources and destroying our natural environment. And this is going to require, you know, all of us as an industry to change how we think about things. We need to rethink the way we think about waste. Waste is something that is, you know, completely not able to be used again. It's at the end of its life. And we need to start to think of some of those materials that we would generally consider waste and think of them as a resource. So those plastic straws, those could be a resource, you know, things like that. Then we can start to rethink buildings as a way to restore the environment. So, you know, traditionally buildings have been something that environmental advocates have, you know, pushed away because they think they're destroying the environment. But we can start to rethink of buildings as a way to restore the environment. We can have regenerative buildings using the Living Building Challenge. We can use materials that take waste out of the landfills we have and use them, you know, in permanent structures that won't re-release them back into the environment. And then finally, we can optimize our designs to minimize resource use. So this is just all about being mindful about your projects, the sizes of materials, and how those are being oriented for each space. And we can get into that a little more in a little while. So now we're going to start to think of waste as a resource. So material that is unwanted, that's generally what waste means in the building industry. And a resource is, you know, a natural feature that enhances quality of life, a stock or supply of materials or assets. So we need to start thinking of, for example, plastic waste as a asset and a material that can be used for function and bring value to the industry. And it's all about, you know, creating these industries that view plastic as a resource. You can create an industry that's going to add value to this recycled content. And if people are willing to pay for recycled content, then we have a whole functioning economic circle of people paying for what was considered waste, but is now a great, valuable resource. So if we are to look at contributions to waste from consumers, we are talking about single-use plastics, your packaging, your plastic utensils, you know, those plastic bags, again, those are the main culprit right here. Cheap materials that break easily are, you know, a super huge contributor to our consumer waste stream. And then there's the food waste. This is so incredible to me that 30 to 40% of all food produced in the United States is thrown away. So that's good quality food just being thrown away. There's lots of restrictions and rules around catering events. I always see so much thrown out. So this is something we need to, really be mindful of. I know it's not directly contributing to the building industry, but I always like to make a point right here. And then we can focus on, the use of non-renewable resources like petroleum-based products, aka plastics. So if we look at consumer goods that are using waste as a resource, Adidas has really done something amazing here. They started with just doing one line of recycled ocean plastic shoes, but now they've moved into making all of their lines of shoes with recycled plastics. And, at first I used to kind of be skeptical of this strategy, be like, oh, of course they're only going to do it for one pair of shoes and not all of them. But, they've really evolved to making all of their shoes out of recycled plastic. There's other companies making wool hats out of recycled wool. We have a line that uses blue jean clippings for insulation. So there's lots of things coming out using recycled plastic and other recycled materials. And here's just a few more examples. So we have a phone case with a recycled skateboard deck on the back of it. We have a bike made of recycled aluminum, women's shoes from recycled plastic by Rothy's, fabrics made of recycled plastic. So there's so many different options to purchase that don't require using these virgin materials or that could use, recycled content. And this will just help us to, limit the amount of raw materials we're using, limit the amount of waste we're contributing to waste stream in the United States. So now something a little more relevant to all of us is the building industry's contribution to our waste. So, we're moving into bigger and better buildings, every year, something better, something bigger, but there's a huge cost to the natural world on this. We have, 534 million tons of construction and demolition debris in 2014. So that's just 1 year's worth of waste. And it's more than twice the amount of generated municipal solid waste. So this is the main culprit in the whole waste, issue is construction and demolition. And we are moving in a sustainable and healthy direction with some of the policies being passed by local governments and with LEED becoming more popular and WELL being more popular, but we aren't there yet. And we really, to get there, need to work as an industry to make this happen. Architects and designers need to make sure that they are demanding these type of products and fighting for these type of products in their specs with building owners, communicating the need to use these types of materials to the building owners, and also communicating back with distributors and manufacturers to make sure we're, making the right products for the industry. So some examples we have of building materials that are using waste as a resource are stone cycling bricks. These are bricks made of recycled stones and other bricks. There's lots of colors and finishes available. There's other examples for recycled paper as countertops. Recycled steel is a huge thing in the building industry right now. Most steel, honestly, is recycled at this point. And there's recycled or reclaimed wood as well. So when we look at, some of the pictures on this slide right here, we have the recycled denim insulation, recycled glass in a countertop, recycled plastic, recycled PET felt acoustic panels, sintered stones made from mineral powder, and solid surfaces made from recycled plastic. And, it's really great to be able to use these products, especially because they communicate something about the people who are in the building, communicates how they care about the environment. There's always a story with at least CaraGreen's products, but most all sustainable products have such great stories that go along with them to talk about, how they were produced and why they're produced that way, so that we can make these products more popular. And overall, by using recycled materials, by using these products that take waste and use it as a resource, we're going to be able to divert a lot of waste or a lot of material from the waste stream. So the building industry is the largest contributor to the waste stream, as I mentioned before. So what else can we do? and we can build to restore. That's a great option. You know, construct something that, or repair something that has already been built. And restoring building is a great option to, you know, not use a lot of virgin material. You can use the core and shell of an older building and just renovate it with, you know, more environmentally friendly materials, more durable materials that last longer. And, you know, you really want to be able to design your buildings to benefit the local environment as well. So it's not just, you know, restoring older buildings, it's also restoring the natural environment around the building, and things like access to nature, views outside, and other biophilic design elements really help to create a healthier building for occupants and also benefit, you know, the environment around it. So this often leads to increased employee efficiency and productivity as well, as a side note. But, you know, things like solar arrays and water filtration from rainwater capture can, you know, help to reduce the need for raw resources. And biomimicry is a great way to take cues from the natural world on how to, you know, use more sustainable materials, more sustainable systems, and have an overall less impact on the natural world.
Hey,
so
Rob, it's Ryan.
Yep.
I wanted to see if I could jump in for just a second here and maybe let you catch your breath. And we have 2 questions as well. So I'll ask this very slowly so you can maybe catch your breath and grab a sip of water or something. But I did want to say thanks to the folks that are putting questions in here. So we've got 2. So first, Joe is kind of from the Asheville area, and he has a question. And maybe just a quick comment on this one, Rob, because I know this is kind of a bigger topic, but it's a good question for right now. He just wanted to know how delivery and pickup of materials is happening right now. Just kind of in this modern environment of travel restrictions and things. Do you just have a kind of quick comment on how CaraGreen is addressing that?
Yeah, so it's definitely changing. Right now, things are, you know, as they were before all of this started, but there's definitely some delays that have come in. But, you know, to speak on the transportation factor, you know, that's something I always like to consider as a waste as well, those emissions coming from all those vehicles. Ideally, it would be great to have a fleet of electric trucks, but that's not possible yet. Yeah, does that answer the question, or is there more to speak on?
Well, and I think just, are you guys able to deliver materials now, or
oh yeah,
how is that going?
Yeah, we're still delivering. We're delivering.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Kind of depends on the manufacturer, honestly, right now. Some have increased lead time, some are, you know, producing as is. It just depends on what state they are in or what country they're in. But generally, we're still shipping all the materials right now.
Okay, that's good to know. And so we have a second question. Back to your presentation. This is coming from Melissa, so I'll read this one for you. She's kind of a 2-parter. What are the processes for creating these recycled materials? And then the second part is, are there effects that produce more CO2? What would kind of be an example of that, other sort of toxic waste effects? So processes for creating recycled materials, and then are there effects that produce more CO2?
Okay. So as far as the process for creating recycled materials, it's different for every product, really. We have, I would say, generally the way it works with some of our recycled products is we are taking post-industrial waste products. So with plastics, we're getting ground up plastic chips for some of our materials. For our recycled acrylic surfacing, we are taking acrylic clippings from a medical instrument manufacturing facility up in Buffalo, New York. And we also have some recycled metals in there as well that we collect from metal shops. So a lot of times we are collecting these, what are considered waste to some parties, and using them for our materials, and we'll actually buy them from them. So it's all about, you know, adding value to these products that people think are waste, and, you know, we're able to sell them, you know, to add value to the whole supply chain, everyone, including the person who is sourcing these waste products, quote unquote. And then,
so you guys have those relationships. Yeah. So the second question was just, are there effects or sort of anything, any part of that process that would produce more CO2 just from the recycling process?
Yeah, so I mean, recycling does require, depending on, how you're recycling, if you're melting down plastic and, forming it into new things, that's going to take a ton of energy. So it's always important to pay attention to the material, see what certifications they have. Is it produced in a clean energy facility, or are they just using traditional energy from, the local municipality? So things like that are always good to check on, looking into the whole supply chain, where the energy is coming from. Is the company invested in renewables, things like that, because recycling does require quite a bit of energy in some cases.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for those questions to the folks there, and
Sure.
Rob for responding. Let's go ahead, Rob, and keep going.
Okay. So moving into the Bullitt Center, this is out in Washington State, and it's a certified living building. I'm a huge fan of the Living Building Challenge, although it is very tough to accomplish. It's such a cool concept. What buildings that are, buildings that are certified by this body are technically regenerative buildings. So they're not just like environmentally friendly. They're not just reducing their impact. They're actually providing a positive impact on the area. So with this building right here, we're seeing, a big solar array that is actually contributing clean energy to the local energy grid. So other buildings around this building are running off of its solar energy as well. They have operable windows that minimize the need for heating and cooling, so reducing energy usage again. And the project site also included a park and some co-working spaces within the building to help, provide benefits to the community around it. They made the green spaces accessible to people, and, that just has its own natural environmental impacts as well. So then, we can start to move into optimizing and minimizing. So what this really means is using products in the most effective way possible, but also reducing the amount of waste that we're creating from each material, each project, whatever. So if we were to look at how we are going to optimize, biomimicry is a great way to optimize any process, any material, or any structure. So I do a whole course on biomimicry through CaraGreen as well, and it really takes a deep dive. This is a topic I've been learning about since I was in undergrad, and it's just such a cool concept. It's all about looking to nature to teach us about what technologies we can create. So, you can model structures, systems, and forms based on, technologies that have evolved in nature. Nature's had billions of years to evolve over time. There's been so many different life forms, so many different natural technologies out there, and we have so much that we can take from them, especially in the sense of sustainability, because nature is a closed loop supply chain. It really flows together in a harmonious way. We can learn how to create systems and structures that mimic those patterns, mimic those processes to create a more closed loop supply chain, reduce waste and things like that. And a really easy way for me to explain biomimicry is to look at this train on the slide. It's very aerodynamic, but they actually modeled it after a bird beak to, provide aerodynamic nature, reduce fuel use, and overall more efficient train structure. So just a few more examples of biomimicry is Pure Bond and mollusks. So they've created Pure Bond, which is a wood glue to mimic similar proteins that are used in mollusks to adhere to any surface. So basically what this is doing is it's mimicking those sticky proteins that mollusks use to stick to rocks and made it into a wood glue. This is a great alternative to a lot of other wood glues because it doesn't have any formaldehyde in it, and it's just a more natural material composition overall. Another great example of biomimicry is with sintered stone. So sintered stone in some cases has this biocare coating, Lapitec, Puretti, and Neolith. They each kind of call it something different, but it's this this coating that goes into the material that actually has CO2 and other organic compounds bind to it, and then UV light, when when it makes contact with the surface, actually breaks down these organic pollutants and bind to the surface, which are then washed out after it rains. So it's actually mimicking the way a tree breaks down carbon dioxide and produces oxygen. Just another way to clean our air made by man. So then we can look to another optimization quality or optimization factor. We can choose quality. And what we're talking about right here is opting for the more durable products. Look for products that are going to last for 50 years instead of 10. Limit the amount of items that are going to enter the waste stream over the building's lifetime. A quick example of this would be using a countertop that doesn't scratch or stain. If that can hold up for 50 years without any maintenance, that would be the best situation. Limit the amount of countertop replacements that need to go into a building. And that's just one example. So anything that's durable is just going to lessen the amount of replacements, lessen the amount of materials that are going to go into the waste stream. And even when we look at consumer goods, our straw issue comes up again. You can use a stainless straw to replace all of your plastic straws that you might use over a year, and that will just continue to reduce that waste stream over time. And yeah, so that's pretty much it on choosing quality. The next one you want to consider is to minimize the amount of material you're using. Consider your yield from each material. So what I always like to talk about with this is, again, with the countertop example, but when you're designing your space, say it's a kitchen, do you really need a 7-foot countertop when the slab is only 6 feet? Can you design the kitchen to fit the 6-foot slab so that you don't have to waste 6 feet of an additional 7-foot slab? Things like that. If you're just taking that into account from the beginning, you can have buildings that are using a lot less resources, contributing a lot less waste when it's actually time for construction. Another way we can minimize is downsize. And, I always like to pose this question with this slide. How much space do you want versus how much do you actually need? And this is something that we've seen with the tiny home revolution happening. Lots of younger people have become really interested in building tiny homes. We had a worker at CaraGreen that actually, that's how he got in touch with CaraGreen in the first place, was built his tiny home trailer. But it's all about, build for how much space you actually need. How big of a kitchen do you really need? How much space do you need? How many different rooms do you need? Maybe only a bedroom and a kitchen and a bathroom. Overall, that's, what everyone needs on a basic level. So it's all about designing spaces to fit the needs of people instead of how much they want. And, this is a great example. Co-working spaces really come up. And this is all about sharing spaces and resources so that we don't need 5 office buildings. Maybe people can share their spaces when they need it. So, that really wraps it up. And we really want you to focus on using waste as a resource, rethinking that, how we think about waste, build to restore the natural world, and optimize your designs to minimize the amount of resources used. And that will help you to create better over time. So, overall, we want to create better products to limit waste, and we need input from architects and designers to give to our manufacturers on this. We want to create better products that use waste as a resource and create buildings to restore the environment through things like LEED and the Living Buildings Challenge. So that pretty much wraps it up. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those for you. Just, open it up now.
Sounds great. Well, thank you, Rob. This is Ryan with NCBPA again, just kind of checking back in. So we appreciate all of the presentation here, Rob. I'm speaking to you from a tiny house of 276 square feet. So well said on designing that properly. I pretty much wrapped, mine was a retrofit, but I pretty much wrapped all of the design of my interior space around 8-foot countertops, so I wouldn't have to waste any material and have nice square corners. So that worked out pretty well. Good suggestion there. Great. So yeah, we'll be happy to stay on for a little bit and ask any questions and take any questions in the chat box as well. And then we can also open up the phone line here. So for folks that are a little bit savvy with GoToMeeting, if you would like to unmute yourself and ask Rob a question, you're more than welcome to. We can also just take your questions in the chat box and I can unmute you if needed. So if you do have a question for Rob, we'd love to hear from you now, and we'll just kind of see if folks have anything else to say, questions or suggestions, recommendations. We've had a little bit of conversation kind of going in the chat box throughout here, and our buddy Joe over here in Asheville has been making some comments about some resources he's seen as well with, I think, Public TV had a publication on plastics, and he was mentioning that Columbia makes the plywood in Old Fort as well. So we appreciate those questions from he and Melissa and some others. So Rob, just while we're waiting for some questions here, any other just kind of related recommendations or just kind of trending things that you've seen out there in the marketplace recently?
Let me think. I would say, just definitely check out the Living Building Challenge. When you're looking for products like this, maybe look towards the Cradle to Cradle certification. I read that book in grad school, and it's just an awesome explanation of, the cradle to grave supply chains we have now and how we can start to switch it to, close those supply chains. So we're using waste as a resource. It's just, yeah, a great read if anyone has the time now that we're all home.
Well said. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, and I know that there's a couple of buildings that have been popping up in the southeast. The Candida building down in Atlanta on Georgia Tech campus seems like it's pretty great. And then I know the one up in DC. I always forget the name of it, but you probably know the one that I'm talking about. That's just super energy positive. It has the Earth Labyrinth in it and probably a whole bunch of really good materials, I would hope.
I know the African American Smithsonian right now was just built, a couple of years ago, and I was just in there for a meeting actually, and they did such an awesome job with their LEED certification and using all sustainable materials. The whole museum is about a 2-mile walk to do the whole thing, and they designed it so that it's like a healthy experience too, to make you exercise, so using some biophilic and well concepts as well. But yeah, I guess if anyone on the call wants to hear a presentation with CaraGreen on any of our other topics, feel free to reach out to us through the website. You can see all of our courses, and we can work with you to do a virtual presentation during this time as well.
Good, well said. We had one comment come in just based on that conversation. Valerie said that in DC, the American Geophysical Building is net zero and uses reused materials such as toilets to make terrazzo flooring and a conference room table. I hope I said that correctly. I know that there was sort of a comment, a parentheses in there. So looks like they used reused materials to make terrazzo flooring and a conference room table, which is interesting. So thank you, Valerie, for that plug there. That's good to hear that.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out.
There's one more to put on your list when you're allowed to, of course.
True.
Well, we'll stay on for a couple more minutes here and just see if anybody has any comments over the GoToMeeting comment field here, or if you'd like to unmute yourself. We'll just take a quick pause here and see if anybody has anything. And just one final reminder, we will be sending out the video recording of this here soon, and also a PDF of the presentation. You'll have Rob's contact information as well, and you can find them on those resources too. So, okay, it looks like we're done for the day. So thanks everybody for joining us live, and for folks listening in later on, we appreciate you as well. Want to thank Rob and CaraGreen for offering his time to present on this great topic, and I think very well presented. I learned a lot, which is always fun for me to be on these, but we'll definitely make sure to put this information out to the rest of the industry. So Rob, just a final thank you very much. Appreciate your time, and we'll get some contact information and copies out to everybody else. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
And everybody have a good rest of your day, good rest of the week, and stay safe out there. Take care.